Thank you. Oh, thank you. We're a little more friendly here. There's just friends and family left here, so this is good. This is the way I like to communicate. So, again, my name is Trey Willis. I'm the CTO at Connectbase. An absolute pleasure to be with you again this morning, and really a neat opportunity for me just to sit and visit with some pretty special panelists for us, for coming from a couple of different areas, a couple of different roles and responsibilities. So I'm excited to hear some of the stories that they tell likewise, because it ties directly into what I do on a regular basis. But thank you again for being here. This session is called Modernizing Connectivity, Real World Wins from Digital Transformation Leaders. We'll start with a stat. McKinsey has a study out there from a few years ago that estimates that companies who embrace digital transformation in operations can cut process costs by as much as 40% and speed up delivery by more than 50%. It's a pretty broad stat, that context, but just think about what the outcomes like that might mean for your business. Really, really meaningful kind of change. That's why we talk about this stuff all the time: transformation, automation, modernization in that way. If you do that in our industry for things like quoting, ordering, transacting in that way, taking things from days to hours, taking delivery from months to weeks or even days, it's not a benefit. That's market moving. It's a transitional point there. And that's what modernization and connectivity really means. And so it's not just those major processes that matter, though. So I've spoken to many of our colleagues here with us this week, and we talk about the little things too. The little things over and over augment, they add up to big things. I talked to one of our friends a few days ago, and he literally said, this is real. I have an order form that has over 700 fields to fill out every time we place an order. It's bananas, right? It's absolutely crazy to think about doing that on a consistent basis. And that's the stuff that it's not only like the obvious revenue creating or revenue preserving kinds of activities, not just the big grand finale kind of activities like I want to place an order, for example, from our clients. It's all those things that they eat up our minutes, our days, our weeks in that particular way. Those big steps that our teammates and partners have to go through many times a day or week. So that's what's important to us in that way. And no one here is unique in the sense that you don't have legacy systems to deal with. I've had so many acquisition kind of integration kind of dialogues this week likewise. Those are real things for us. And bringing those legacy systems along, dragging those anchors with us, are things that we have to face and we have to deal with. So modernization really means to say replacing those legacy systems or those manual processes, or dealing with those silos that we've created, even with the best of intentions in that way, making systems talk to each other, automating those repetitive steps, and then finding ways to do that scale without more people or without additional resources, because those new ideas and those new opportunities don't quit coming. And so when we talk about digital transformation a lot, it's been a common term we've talked about for years now, still very, very necessary. But let's not make today just really about the buzzwords. Guys, you've seen me do a panel or two. My goal is to make it a real, honest conversation. Let's help the audience understand different ideas and different perspectives that you bring and that these leaders bring. It's talking about practical change, about real work, and ultimately about real wins. How do we measure those things and understand that they're mattering for us in that way? So together, we'll hear from some of our leaders here. We'll hear about challenges that they faced, what tools they leaned on. Perhaps those tools are directly in the connected world, things like Bid Manager or things like CPQ or List Manager, for example, but perhaps wider than that, because we know that the connected world is a tool, it's an enabler in that sense, but this ecosystem is really what this whole dialogue is about. And so we might take the connected world example, we might take a different example, but we'll expand it into how those real things came to life and the real benefits that you've seen with your team either now or perhaps what you're planning to do. So without further ado, let's have that particular honest conversation about speed and scale and using things like simplicity or working towards simplicity as that competitive advantage. I will introduce people that are not named Trey that you really want to hear from. We'll start with Chris. This is Chris Alberding. He's the Chief Product Officer at BCN. A different role for him in that particular way, but a longtime member of the family, been in the ecosystem for a long time. We've got Tammy Cruz, who's the Vice President of Spectrum Business Carrier and Mobile Backhaul Sales at Spectrum Business. And then we've got Jordan Dukes, the Director of Strategic Solutions at Megaports. And all of these folks are industry experts and veterans in the game. So lots of stories, perhaps not just about the ones you're telling now, but they've been here with us for a long time. So really relatable types of opportunities there. Thank you all for being here for the moment, and looking forward to hearing some more of your stories. I've got a handful of questions I'll ask to share some of these across a couple of the different panelists here. We won't ask every single person to answer all of them, but let's just have a little bit of a dialogue here. And so we'll start with, why don't we start? Let me start with Chris. You're in a different role, brand new role, but not new to the business, not new to the game, obviously, in the product kind of role. What is as you think about your biggest challenges, and you think about modernization, it's critically important, it's probably top of list for you as a chief product officer. What do you think your biggest challenge has been recently, or perhaps one that you're facing now that you'd like to introduce to the audience, and then we'll continue to pull on that throughout the session?
Sure. So, I'm 4 weeks into the role as Chief Product Officer at BCN, and been in this industry for 30 years, so I've got a lot of insight. I've been leading product organizations for 19 years now, so the external side of product is something I'm incredibly comfortable with. Know where we...
Can you turn the mic on?
Oh, it's on. Is it on?
Check.
Okay, I guess I just need to hold it closer. So I look at it as, where we need to take our product suite, where we need to focus and service our customers and our partners the best. That's the easy part of product. Where I really want to invest and where our focus is right now at BCN, that is modernizing the back end of that. The way we're going to win more business is not by having the most competitive product. Technology works. We can integrate multiple technologies, wrap them in a great service wrapper. That's the easy part. Where we are 100% indirect, where we lose is time. So when somebody brings us a 200-site opportunity, if we can't respond the fastest, we probably will lose, because that's the way the indirect channel works. It's two things will drive the decision: how quickly you get me an answer and how accurate and how much I'm going to get paid on that answer. So ultimately it comes down to, can we be the first there? Connectbase has helped us dramatically make a great step in that direction, but where we have to continue to evolve is adding more automation within BCN now. So we can take advantage of the other things that Connectbase has to offer. So I think Jennifer won an award yesterday from BCN for being such a great user and embracer and feedback and partner of Connectbase. So I am not at all concerned about our partnership and where we're going. What I want to figure out is, how do we better leverage that? How do we integrate through APIs so that we can remove people from part of the process and get this so that you can get answers back instantly from us? And then we're only working on the exceptions instead of the massive part of the opportunity. So there's a project we kicked off about 3 weeks ago to really modernize the entire back end and inside of BCN, and that starts with our customer and partner portal and will evolve through every aspect of the business. So there's no doubt in my mind that digital transformation is not only an external, but a very large internal project for us as well.
Very good. Thanks, Chris. I don't know if you guys noticed this. He said he started his job 4 weeks ago, and 3 weeks ago he kicked off a project. There is zero chill. He is off to work. So very good. Thank you for that. Tammy, do you have a story you'd like to kind of get us started with that talks about your biggest challenge or a major challenge we can use as an example that helps get us started in the conversation as well?
Yeah, so a lot of it is like Chris said, it's a journey. We've been 4 years into the partnership with Connectbase, and
Can you turn the mic on,
thank you.
please?
Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you find where you want to start the journey, which for us was CPQ.
Okay.
But then we've got to focus on the full end-to-end life cycle of our customers' buying, and really make sure that we're looking at each step of that process as we think about how we evolve the platform. And so we have taken steps to go from CPQ to Availability Engine API. We have launched the portal. But with each of those next steps come certain challenges, whether that's internally getting buy-in, demonstrating ROI on the platform. It could also be just trying to make sure that we're connecting all of the dots, right? So now we're operating fully in search and serviceability and quoting, but now how do we take it to the next step of ordering? So we're one full seamless start to finish with our clients. One of the other things you mentioned too is just making sure that there's speed to market. And and I'm on the sell side, you're on the buy side, and so we have to make sure that we understand what the priorities are of our clients, so that each step that we're taking is aligning with what their priorities are. I mean, one of the things that the platform has enabled us to do is we measure every time we launch a new set of buildings. We measure specifically how many days, weeks, months it takes us for our clients to adopt those buildings. That adoption and that ability to realize revenue happens a lot faster now that we're in the platform. So it's really, how do we go from good to great, and how do we make sure that we continue to push ourselves and completely get that end-to-end solution in place?
Yeah, very good. Very relatable, I'm sure, to many of us. And you said a couple of really important things that we'll touch on throughout this conversation is, what are you measuring? How do you make sure that you're actually making progress in the direction that you want? It's not a hope and a dream. There's real measurements here. We're running a business. That's excellent in that way. So we'll hold on that for a minute. And both of you so far talked about being really mindful of the end-to-end process. You can automate things in the process, but if you don't make sure that you're touching, understanding, if you will, the full flow and the full implications, you're going to miss a thing. You're going to miss an opportunity. You might not even pick the right stuff. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about here in a second, how do you choose where to start? How do you make those decisions in that way? Jordan, if you'd like to just introduce yourself to the team and just talk a little bit about your example that you have.
Yeah, certainly. Jordan Dukes. I lead up our strategic alliance sales at Megaport. But in that role, I end up touching a lot of different things, not just our alliance opportunities, but I do spend a lot of time working on what we kind of see as our complex opportunities. Lots of moving pieces, lots of different access requirements. And for us, we're really trying to deliver an end-to-end solution. We talked about end-to-end automation. But for us, we're a seller on the platform, but we're truly trying to get our customers access to our platform. And we're using that as a means to get them to our POPs. 3 weeks ago, we announced on the NASDAQ, we just crossed the 1,000 data center threshold. We just got popped 1,000 data centers, and that means we have real kit in real racks, in real data centers. It's not a virtualized environment. So what Connectbase allows us to do is give our customers who are looking for that end-to-end solution where we can provide the middle mile and access to cloud on-ramps, we're giving them that tool to go find that tail circuit, that access circuit, to get them to our POPs. Because that's the long pole in the tent. When you're trying to gain access to our platform, it's all about being able to get to that switch, that router, take down a port, take down a virtual device, whatever it may be. And then we enable you to gain access to those 1,000 data centers, but also 400 or 500 cloud on-ramps around the globe. And it's instantaneous. For us, it's all about automation. It's all about making sure that that quoting process, the ordering process is all seamless for our customers so they can gain access to all that's on our platform. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, GPU as a service, obviously getting access to all these, AI environments, Grok, Vultr, Latitude, SH, all have taken down tons and tons of capacity on our platform. So a user, an enterprise, can go gain access to all of those GPU as a service environments and get access to whatever the latest Blackwell or whatever the next one is from NVIDIA, and then find the platforms that's best for them, so they can actually generate kind of a platform for arbitrage, so they can move in a workload from AWS, they can inference there, or train a model and move it somewhere else. So again, for us, it's really just getting those enterprises to our platform.
Yeah. Efficiency, and again, you mentioned the same thing. End-to-end workflow is really important, so you can pick the right place. Let's talk about that for just a minute. Tammy, I'll ask you to start, but just as a leaderful individual on your team, obviously you have a critical role on the team in that way. But as you think about helping your team or your business units, if you were going to give guidance on how do we choose where to start, how do we think about those things? Can you maybe give us how you think about evaluating where to start? There's opportunities are endless, right? We can do a number of things, but we have to pick one or two or three of those things to focus on so that we can make a difference. How do you think through that selection process, perhaps?
Yeah, I think so. When we started the initial partnership, it became demonstrating the return on the investment. And so in order to do that, we had to find where we were going to scale the fastest. And so for us, it was to start in CPQ in the sellers platform, because we could quickly meet many mutual customers, and we have all of the reporting and tools that we need to be able to quantify the success of the platform, and then demonstrate the return to the folks who are funding it in our organization, so that we can make an argument to, or make a business case to continue that path and continue that evolution. I think that's a big part of it. But sometimes where you decide to start and then you look back and you think about, okay, was that the best place to start? Would I do it any differently? And while I don't think I would do it any differently, I may have done some things simultaneously with things like availability engine API, because some of these things could have been done in parallel. And then the other part of it I would say is as you go into the platform, for us, we advertise 2.7 million buildings at rate card, but we have a lot of other buildings that we advertise that you can secure a price through our quote desk. Making sure the data is as clean as it can be at the front end of establishing the partnership is key. And I'm looking at one team member who really is integral in us getting our data clean. But that's one of those things where you want speed and you want to get into the platform, but you don't want to sacrifice some of the data integrity and making sure, because we really need to make sure our clients trust us, trust the data in the environment, are comfortable with it. So that's my thoughts there.
Totally great. Yeah, I'll reframe a couple of things, but you're demonstrating a clear understanding or command of what's important to you. So you're kind of starting with why, if you will. And that's a critical kind of element to think about it for any project. But especially if you think about modernization and or automation and or streamlining processes, what's your goal? Why are you even doing this in the first place? And then I think you have to understand what you expect the outcomes to be. And you've talked about this a few times. You've demonstrated to us clearly that you understand the context here, but you want to measure those outcomes and then use the information to make other adjustments, right? I'll give you a chance to talk more about your what would you do differently here in a second, but you helped us understand the starting point's really, really important. So speed is critical. All of you talked about speed already, but doing it thoughtfully, doing it wisely, and starting with a relatively clean set of data is a critical element to start with likewise.
Can I add one more thought?
Of course.
So the other thing that we did early on is we looked at the growth in our transactional business for the clients who were on the platform and compared that to the growth of the client set that wasn't on an automated platform. And it was clear that the growth in transactional machine-to-machine business for those in the platform was faster than those that we were handing flat files to, waiting for them to load them and that sort of thing. And so there are a lot of different ways that you can measure that success, but that's just one of many. All
good examples to pull on. They're going to kick us out of here in 32 minutes, or otherwise we talk about both of those for a long time. Chris, as you think about, similar kind of question, I'll ask a slightly different angle. You're embarking on a brand new project, a major project with lots and lots of roots to that element there. But as you think about that overall program, a monster program, it seems like, how do you decide what to do first, how do you decide what to prioritize first? And are you thinking about it in terms of an iterative type of approach where you bring things to market in pieces, or do you need to bring it together and then maybe behind the scenes and then present it in a big bang kind of approach? How do you think about those things based on your experience?
Yeah, this is a great question because it is perfectly timed where I'm at BCN right now. Here we are 4 weeks into it, evaluating this, what we're calling the big, beautiful project. So stealing a little bit from the environment out there. But so, how do you prioritize? Where do you start? So I've had a tenet that I've used my entire career, and that is everything starts with the customer. If I look at how I'm going to impact the customer and work backward from there, that'll drive the right decision. And that's where we're starting. So we're looking at, customer starts with qualification order. So how do we improve that process? Then how do we take the next step is in order fulfillment and service delivery. How do we drive more efficiencies there? And the beautiful thing is, I've been in this industry a long time. I've had leaders that said, make all your decisions based on our underlying economics. I sit at a company today that says, make our decision based on the customer experience. And that is unheard of in this industry. I'm not saying that not other people in this room are doing it, but my experience is I've been with billion-dollar companies and million-dollar companies, and we tend to focus on the underlying economics as the priority driver. It's great to see a company that drives the decision based on the customer experience. And that is 100% why we've kicked off the Big Beautiful Project, is to improve our customer experience and use technology and automation to help do that.
Really neat. I don't think he's kidding. I think they actually call it the Big Beautiful Project, so that's funny. But honestly, all kidding aside, I work for a guy who talks like that a lot, and it's one of the things that makes
You do.
the culture at Connectbase really special. He believes that in his heart, and we filter that through the organization. So I'd love to hear that you're in a place that exemplifies that as well. It's just a special thing to be a part of when you can think about the outcomes as being the customer experience. It's really unique. That's cool, man.
Absolutely.
Jordan, a similar question, but another slightly different spin on it. You're in more of a sales role, more of a relationship role in that way. Think about encountering resistance. You've never been challenged in a sale in your life, I'm sure.
Oh, no, never. No.
But when you think about encountering resistance, you're on a side of selling, oftentimes, I'm sure, a solution and helping folks to modernize, helping to enable folks in that way. When you think about encountering resistance in that cycle, or perhaps an internal example, whichever's more appropriate for you.
Got a few of those as well.
How do you navigate? How do you approach it? And what are your tactics or strategies to deal with those kinds of challenges that you face in that way?
Well, it's interesting what Chris just said about making the customer first. It's like, I feel like I'm having this debate sometimes internally, externally. It's like, sometimes we get so lost in the engineering minutia that we lose sight of actually what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I try to balance that because deep down I'm really a nerd, and I have to figure out that balance between the customer and getting a deal across the transom, and also making sure we enforce the automation and engineering guidelines that we've put forth. But I can think about challenges that I've run into. Work on a lot of big enterprise, like Fortune 50s out of the New York market. And like where Connectbase has helped us, not as a seller, but as a buyer, where I've had like a top 3 pharma come to us and say, look, we still have this on-prem data center. We're having tons of problem. Unprotected wave keeps going down. We're having issues constantly. Everybody's finger pointing. Megaport, we know that's not your core competency, but can you help us figure this out? We have all this business we want to give you, but we can't really get there until you help us get this DC online. So it's really back to providing that access, but we're on the flip side now. We're actually going in and trying to procure that on behalf of the customer to get them to us again. So there's certainly challenges there. And these folks, they're like, it's not even a cost issue many times. It's like, just help me get through this because I can't figure it out, or I don't have the time to figure it out. So in that case, Connectbase has really helped us to overcome challenges like that.
Cool. Yeah, there's no shortage of challenges that we face, right? That's what we do every single day. Tammy, as you think about challenges in your role, you've got a slightly different spin on that kind of concept than Jordan, perhaps. How do you think about facing those challenges in an organization, perhaps with, I'm trying not to use the word bureaucracy, but normal work challenges, right? I mean, we're dealing with budgets, we're dealing with prioritization in that way. How do you think about that? How do you perhaps frame up the example on helping us to understand what that example might be that you faced most recently or upcoming, and then how do you think about dealing with those things? How do you approach them, and maybe what are some strategies that you think of are interesting as it relates to getting to that, selling that modernization story that's so critical for us to spend that budget or to get that project approved, for example?
Yeah, a couple thoughts. So financially demonstrating that things are working and it's paying itself back is the easy one. But buy-in sort of from a cultural perspective is sometimes what the challenge is. Not all leaders understand and speak the same language, right? And explaining it to someone who maybe doesn't fully understand what the platform does and how we connect, and it's sometimes complicated to share. And so we've built over the last couple of years full automation in our ordering. So through the TransUnion Neustar platform, and there's a lot of investment in that part of the platform for us. And so because there's buy-in there, there's opportunity for us sometimes to leverage that work and try and approach this as one project where we're looking at serviceability, quoting, and we want to make it seamless all the way to install and billing. And so when we are able to sort of piggyback on some of the other broader programs that are automation, modernization, transformation, it does help us, right? Because there's already buy-in, and so there's less hurdles to overcome.
Okay.
That's one of them, and then I think we have to do, I'll say for myself, I love coming to these shows because there are things that I learn. Every time I think I know a lot, there's so many more things that we can do. And so a couple brief examples, we have a program called Quick Connect. We put an ag switch in the building. Our intervals are 30 days or less. We also, doesn't matter if it's a build or if it's a fiber-lit building, we always extend to the DMARC. It's in the MRC. There's no additional charges. But I don't know that everyone sees that in our ecosystem. And even if we pass it, will our customers, where they're consuming it, see it? And so these are some of the things that I don't want to say challenges, but they're opportunities that we have to sort of navigate through to just make the platform perform better.
Okay. Yeah, very good. Yeah, you talked about a few things that I'll try to summarize here. The very first thing you talked about was people and buy-in, and you're trying to create the relationship there. For those of us who are wondering about what happens to our roles or our jobs over time as AI takes on the world, there's been an overwhelming theme this week that I'll just call attention to that Tammy highlighted. People are still critically important, and relationships are still very, very important to other folks as well. That's obvious to say, but I think we forget it as we think about tools and technology, and we get lost in the solution, so to speak, sometimes. The other thing you talked about, though, that I think is really, really important, again, somewhat intuitive to say, but I don't think we live it very well all the time in our organizations. And you talked about creating momentum a little bit. You can piggyback on some of these other objectives that the business might have. I think that's a really important lesson, a nugget that I just wanted to yank out of there and present to the audience in a direct way. I'm in a chief technology officer role. Everything we do is about projects and programs and development-oriented kind of things. But there are an overwhelming number of those things. When you can organize things in the same light or the same tone, it makes it easier for your other audience members or your other constituents or your other partners to understand why it's important, how it correlates, and then how these things work well together. So really telling that story, using that unified language, you said we don't always speak the same language, is an ultra important takeaway from this session. And you can get over a lot of those hurdles or a lot of those challenges, those resistance elements that we talked about a minute ago, that friction, just by thinking about how you present the context to your audience or to your constituents. You have to sell a little bit. You have to sell a little bit your project and program in that way. But once you get folks on board, then it's about measurement. It's about understanding now, are we getting the outcomes that we're actually aiming at? And really, guys, metrics are the truth teller. So we don't tell stories from our gut. We do that a lot as humans. But in a business setting, be objective about that. So let's talk about that for a minute. Chris, I'll ask you to think about this a little bit. When we talk about modernization, when we talk about digital transformation, we've kind of been synonymizing that with automation a lot. It's more than that. We should be thinking about changing technologies. AI certainly was a monster theme yesterday that we talked about and is in our lives regularly. So modernization isn't just automating manual processes or connecting silos in that way. It really should be thinking about new tools, new strategies, new deployment mechanisms in that way. But as we think about all of those things, certainly speed to market's one, we talked about them, but what KPIs or outcomes are you looking at to tell you that your program or your plans are working? Where are you really focused, and how do you think about those things?
Yeah, I mean, there's some very simple ones that will be the initial KPIs, is our time to respond and our close ratio. I mean, those are two things that are incredibly easy to measure and will drive great outcomes. But I think one of the outcomes that is less measurable that I'm looking to drive, and that's transparency. With digital transformation, opens up a world for incredible transparency to our customer, to our partner, to see everything in that process from initial request all the way to service and support down the road. And that's, to me, it's one of the great side effects of digital transformation, is having amazing transparency and visibility for our customers, for our partners, to know where everything is, because we all know how many phone calls we get of, where's my order? Where's the quote in process? I've got 20 of the locations, I'm still waiting on 3. Where are those at? Or now, I've placed all my orders, but I've only heard back on 4. Where are these going? So, absolutely close ratio and response time, because that's going to help us win business. But ultimately, what's going to keep the business is being transparent and informative to our customers and partners.
I'll ask you to dig in just a little bit deeper, because one of the things you said is really special. Talked about that customer experience. try to be a bit more objective if you can think about, how do you think about, do you have any context on how you think about measuring that transparency or that customer experience in your mind?
So we do use NPS today as
Cool.
as a way to measure customer experience, and I think it's probably one of the better forms of customer experience measurement out there. But ultimately, the best measurement of customer experience is our relationships and having those conversations. We go to market through the indirect partner side, so our partners are very candid in telling us where we're being successful and where we're not. And I love that. You know, when I'm in prior lives where I've dealt with direct sales, you know, direct sales is they're your employees. Sometimes they'll tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
The indirect side will be very candid and tell you exactly what you want to hear and what you don't want to hear. But that, to me, as a product leader, is the most insightful information. I can do more with negative than I can with positive.
Yeah.
Positive, oh, great. I love getting kudos, but I'd much rather hear about the negative.
Yeah, no, it's excellent. Thank you for that. And you're right about that. There's no substitute for real context and detailed feedback from someone else's perspective.
Yeah.
Right? You can't beat that. It's sometimes hard to quantify, but never hard to qualify.
Well, it's why I even like the tone you set up for this session is, you know, it's going to be a real conversation. You know, I didn't prepare notes for this. This was I feel we're going to have a really good conversation, and I like that kind of interaction.
Good man. I did prepare notes, by the way.
Good for you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Tammy, other details or thoughts on KPIs or measurements? You've talked a lot about that being important to you. Maybe get another layer deeper into the details on what might you be looking for, or what might you recommend to anyone out in the audience here that they should be really focused on, that perhaps you've learned over time that you say, this is an area I'd really focus to measure to make sure we're getting the outcomes we expect?
Yeah, I mean, some aspects of it are easier to measure than others. And some are, you know, you feel it by getting having the conversations with your clients and your clients giving you that direct feedback. But it is easier to go back to the stuff that you can quantify, right? And you can put your hands around. And so on the front end of our environment, we know, I could tell you right now what percentage of our requests on average year over year what is that growth, right? We've had 180% year to date, year over year growth in our average requests in the platform. And so taking that data point and then taking it to the next level, which is how much of that growth has translated into orders, because it's not just the platform. You could search all you want, but if our go-to-market and how we deliver pricing and where our coverage is and our intervals and those types of things, if they're off, then you can have all of the requests, but you're not going to see the business. And so that's, I think, an area where we're trying to focus on more, is to sort of tie back. And there's also, you know, measuring through where are our customers searching and what are they searching for, and how are we aligning our go-to-market with where our customers want, like what our customers want and where they want us to be. And that's another one that we're trying to see, where are we missing, right? So if we're seeing a lot of volume being searched for a particular bandwidth, but that's not what we're selling, then we know we have to make tweaks to our go-to-market in order to make sure that we're getting the return on that type of activity.
Really insightful. That last thing you said was really, because now you're starting to help folks understand your depth of experience in the connected world, which I think is great, by the way. But there's a level of detail that's actually really important to think about. It's not just, hey, how many quotes did we get by way of example? It's not just, hey, where are we finding success? It's also, where are we missing opportunities? Thinking about those leading or lagging indicators that help us to really identify what's our next action. What are we going to do about that? Really thoughtful. Thank you for that. Jordan, as you think about measurements, are there things that come to mind for you that you'd like to share with the audience to think about just measuring the outcomes, thinking about modernization either internally to your business or during your sales cycle and those processes?
Yeah, for sure. We had a great discussion with Edison and Matt yesterday. We're fairly new to the platform and trying to see where we're actually hitting the mark. Like to what Tammy said, are we actually providing the product set that folks are looking for?
Yeah.
and then figuring out that correlation between those quotes, those searches, and the actual execution of an order. Apparently, I have some takeaway work to do, some homework over the weekend to go see if I can figure that out. But once we get that, we can figure out what other products to add. We only have a small suite of our products on the platform today, but we want to see if we're missing the mark. If looking simply for internet or cloud connectivity or data center, long haul, figure out where our suite matches up best with the users on the platform. So I think once we get that, we'll start to tailor our offerings a bit more.
Very good. Yeah, thank you for that. I'll share a couple of thoughts on measurements and KPIs quickly, and then we'll transition to lessons learned and maybe some ideas for these guys to get started the right way. But as you think about KPIs in a couple of different ways, I'll merge two topics, and this is a tray thought, so you can throw it away if it doesn't work. But we talked about measuring objectively, but we also talked about speaking the same language. And I think I'm kind of an energetic guy sometimes, but I think that you got to do both at the same time. To tell a great story, you have to be able to communicate well with your audience. They have to be able to hear you and understand the context. That's important. But back that up and bring that context with you. Bring the measurements, the objective measurements that prove that story, those proof points, that evidence. I think that combination of those things is really the differentiator. If you want to sell a project or pitch a project, or you want to talk about how great your team's done, tell that story the right way, but bring those evidence and proof points with you. So align those to the business objectives, not just the technology milestones. Really important differentiator there. Be specific. So that we can make that next decision. So just like Tammy and Jordan talked about a moment ago, understanding the data and the context such that you can make the next action. So the next action becomes clear. And then focus on both leading indicators and lagging indicators. Find out where you're hitting and where you're doing great. Maybe double down there. Find out where you're missing opportunities and make that next investment in those opportunities. So KPIs and measurements, ultra critical as you think about modernizing any part of your stack or any part of your connectivity examples there. A few minutes left, guys. So thank you for bearing with me so far. You guys have been fantastic. Looking back, what would you do differently? So I've made a million mistakes in my life, and hindsight is always 20/20 in that sense, right? You always wish you could start somewhere else or start over. Tammy, I'll go to you just because you already shared a little bit of this example. You talked a little bit about, hey, make sure your data is in the right place. Can you pick that up and maybe talk about either that one or maybe you want to change the script? But what would you do differently if you got to start over tomorrow, either in the connected world or perhaps with a different modernization kind of concept? What would you do differently and why?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, and so the data is key, and it's this balancing of launching versus having data perfection, right? And we're never going to get to data perfection, but finding that balance and really holding ourselves accountable as the provider of the data into the ecosystem and making sure that we're at least identifying what some of the challenges might be as we go into the platform, and ensuring that before you go. I think I would have taken a little bit more time when we're sending these large files over to just make sure we're buttoned up, and then have a plan for when we're removing or making changes. Ensuring that they're being done right. We did get an API established, a push API this year. Certainly, and I look straight at Carrie, thank you, and Dan Olin, thank you. But I think those are some things that we could have done a little differently. And then more tactically, just a couple little items. So how we present our pricing and our bandwidths. We want to make sure that there are successful searches. And so if we don't have a particular bandwidth in the ecosystem, we need to push a rate to all bandwidths. And so that if a customer is searching, they're going to get a result. So just thinking more purposely about how do we ensure that we're going to be found, that there's going to be a match, there's going to be a successful return of your pricing, and then also on the front end, working with customers to test the data. Here's a test file of all of our locations, drop it in, let's just compare notes. Also, how does it look to you? We might be passing building specific interval, which we think is fantastic. But if they're not consuming that when it comes into their view, then we're passing it and they're not benefiting from it. So really having these conversations up front with how our customers are consuming the data and using the data.
Great points. Yeah, understanding a little bit more depth, maybe going a little bit deeper into the why. Like, what are we trying to get out of this is a really thoughtful way to do it. The other thing you mentioned, kind of at the beginning, I'm going to use a different word to describe it, but it's this term that I've read in a book called Wiring a Winning Organization by a guy named Gene Kim, same guy who wrote like Phoenix Project and those kind of tools. He talks about a term he calls slowification. And it's really the concept of slowing down in order to move faster, but not rushing into that empty space because you know you need to fill it, but doing it in a really thoughtful way. And honestly, I think that's what experts do. You're more mindful. You use that experience and apply it in the right ways. And I think that's a great touch point. Chris, as you think about lessons learned, you can draw back on your previous gig or your new gig, but certainly with years in industry, your experience will shine here. If you could do it again, or you could start from scratch, you are starting from scratch.
I am.
So, how might you frame the answer to that question? Is lesson learned and perhaps what you're applying now, given an opportunity to refresh your entire program there?
Yeah, I mean, I have the beauty of, kind of being in a honeymoon place right now where I haven't made a mistake yet. Yet. It will happen, I can assure you that. But I've made a lot of mistakes in my career, and I think one of the things that I really take away is, and it's going to be so beneficial as we move forward here at BCN, and that is, if you can't document a process, don't try to automate it yet. And it's something that I can tell you in many logos prior, we have done. You start this big, beautiful project, and it's all about automation, and you just say, let's start here and go. And then you start realizing you're building your coding for something you don't even know how it works today. If you can't put a Visio diagram that documents that process from start to finish, you can't automate it. And so that'll be one of the things that where it will also help us prioritize where we start this project, is what can we document and know that exists so that can be automated and become more efficient and improve upon.
Excellent point. Excellent point. It reminded me of another quote. If you guys don't pick up on this, I like to read a lot. A problem well described is a problem half solved. And I think that's what you just described there. That's by a guy named Charles Ketterer. But just really, really pertinent. You have to understand your space. If you don't do that really well to start out with, you're doomed. You're destined to find those gaps along the way, and probably a little late in the game.
That was amazing when you said slowification. I'm like, that is exactly the mentality I have going into this. Yes, we have to move fast, but we have to move fast in the right areas with the right thought process behind it.
Yeah. Another plug for Gene Kim, Wiring a Winning Organization. It's a cool book, a real cool book. Jordan, a couple minutes left. Why don't you think about same kind of thing, lessons learned, starting a new project. As you get into those games and using your experience and your expertise, what might you recommend in this moment?
Lessons learned, things I'd do different. I wouldn't have sold my Nivity options. That was number one. That's top of mind right now. But outside of that, actually, being new to the platform, listening to Tammy's experience and what Chris has gone through, I think I'm picking up on a lot of notes that we should think about as we expand on the platform and things that they've learned and that we can kind of get ahead of, focused on what products actually resonate, which ones we see, people quoting more for. But again, and transformation, making sure that we keep the customer in mind, figuring out what is it they're trying to do, whether it's moving a workload, migrating back from the cloud, repatriating back from the cloud, and understanding that the access circuit, the tail, the middle mile that we provide, that's really all just part of one overall arching solution. They have an end goal in mind. We have to keep the eye on that prize and make sure that we're aligned with them.
Very good. Cool. All right, we're coming down to time. We'll wrap up here. Buckle up for the lightning round. It's coming soon. But as we think about wrapping up, a few things really stand out in this conversation. First, you have a panel full of folks who have been in the game for a long time. Expertise, wisdom, you can't replace that. So thank you all for being with us today. And I'm sure there are many of you in the audience as well. Any of you could be here with us today. Think about a few things. Digital transformation in connectivity isn't abstract. We've heard a lot about culture and process and execution discipline today. But today we talked a lot about quoting faster, streamlining operations, and delivering customer experiences that create real differentiation. Secondly, the journey is rarely smooth. So sorry to tell you, it's not that much fun. You guys know that. You're all experts in this particular space, but we have to deal with it. We have to work through it. And every panelist here has talked about resistance, lessons learned, and course corrections. But that transparency and honesty is where the most valuable insights live, a common theme today. Finally, what makes modernization stick is when things like speed and simplicity become not just an internal or an individual goal, but they really become a corporate objective, or we use the teamwork together to unify and build momentum together, build that energy together. That's when we start to create a true competitive advantage, either internally or demonstrating that on behalf of our customer experience. So what you've all been waiting for, the lightning round is here. It's really not that, it's not that exciting. But just to close in kind of a quick way, parting thoughts, 60 seconds or less, sentence or two. As you think about your expertise and your career journeys here, perhaps what's your boldest advice about using the relationship with Connectbase or the connected world in that way to accelerate connectivity transformation and to help our folks modernize connectivity? Chris, go ahead.
Sure. So I'd say be open to change, and a lot of times in this industry we get in ruts where we see something that works. It's been working for a while. We stick to it because it's easy. It's implemented, and we can continue forward. You know, I think Connectbase opens up an opportunity to do things differently, and there is no doubt where I came into 4 weeks ago, we are embarking on a journey to do things very, very differently, and Connectbase is a core function of that. That is where it starts. Where it ends is far beyond that. So for me and my team and my peers around me, it's challenge the status quo, get out of your comfort zone, and be open to change, because change is the only way you evolve. But pay attention to history, because as Dan Caruso showed us yesterday, there's things you don't want to repeat. So, you know, I'm in an interesting environment right now where another topic that I heard yesterday was, you know, we're an aging industry. It's hard to believe that
I take offense to that.
I'm on the upper end of that age in this role now, and there are a lot of my team members that are on the younger side of this. That, you know, I want them to know the history and the mistakes that have been made and learn from those. And it's honestly one of the most fun parts of my role is I'm hoping the knowledge I could pass on to the next generation that's going to continue to keep this industry going and have the knowledge that I have, but be able to leverage that in a new way and challenge themselves.
Yeah, a lot of humility in that statement, willingness to change. Good man. Tammy, 60 seconds, boldest advice about accelerating connectivity transformation?
I think it's think big. So when you start this journey, get a clean slate. Don't think about the things that you can't do, or this won't work, or we didn't do it that way. Just draw out your vision for, if it worked just the way you want it, as perfectly as it could, what would that look like? And it's not going to happen overnight, but at least you have a visual and an understanding and something to work towards. And then, you know, I look back and I think, man, we're completely automated on our ordering. And now we are close to 100% automated in all of our front end. So that vision maybe 3 years ago or 4 years ago to say this is going to be one end to end, and we're going to put ties in our quote desk, and you know, we're not that far away. And when we started, we would have thought it was farther. So just build that broader vision and don't let limits or old ways of doing business interfere. It'll make the journey more fun too.
So good. Very, very good. Jordan, close us out with 60 seconds. Bold advice for accelerating connectivity.
Bold advice. Wow. I think for us, it's embracing a platform like Connected World that allows us to gain access to a whole new cohort of customers that we don't typically focus on, because we're remiss in looking at customers that may not be sitting inside the four walls of a data center. And that's where we focus so much of our time. So I think that's going to be a huge benefit to us, and us being open to platforms like this. And what Chris said really resonated with me. Like 27 years in this industry, it's like my son has, his view of network is Wi-Fi. Like that's it. He doesn't. There is nothing else. And as we joked about earlier for the panel, you know, ATM is not a teller machine in all cases. And really, like I really fall back on that experience because it really helps me to solve problems now that are new. Because I know we can all say, if you look at the technology, we're really solving the same problem over and over and over in a different way, but it just gets faster and faster, Metcalfe's law and all of that. So yeah, really leveraging that experience to help customers kind of get to their end state.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you all very much. 10 seconds left. You guys have been very special today. Thank you for being with me. We heard be open to change, think big, and embrace the new tools and technology. Great closing thoughts. Thank you all very much. For our audience,